When I was 19 years old, I had the opportunity to do an internship in the south of France, the beautiful Côte d'Azur, in a small village between Nice and Monaco called Es Village. And I was able to do an internship at a 2-star Michelin restaurant. Beautiful environment there. I was really looking forward to that opportunity. And in Es Village, just to set a little bit the stage, there is a rock, and on top of that is a small part of the medieval village. And there you had the 2-star Michelin restaurant. So when I arrived there, I drove up that rock to the entrance of the restaurant. I got out of my car, I looked up, I saw beautiful sun, blue skies. There was people walking around, smiling, taking pictures. A lot of tourists were there. I saw the beautiful view that you see here. I just knew like I was going to have a beautiful 6 months coming ahead. And I knew a first impression was very important. So I rang the doorbell at the restaurant, and a man opened with a frown face, and he told me, I'm the boss of the hotel. Are you Ruben, the intern? I was like, yes, that's me. And I stuck my hand out to give him a hand and get a proper introduction. He didn't take my hand, though. He looked confused at me and he said, and what are you doing here, huh? You're not living here. That's for the guests. You have to go down there, down the rock. And at that moment, the way he told me that, knowing that it's my boss, it just automatically made me feel like the clouds came in front of the sun. It started raining, and I just felt I had made a horrible first impression. I knew it was so important. And that night, I was laying in bed, and I was thinking, okay, tomorrow I'm going to have a very good second impression because I want to show that I'm willing to do this internship well. I want to learn from the best here. So the next day, I arrived in the kitchen, and the manager showed me everything, how to do everything, all the plates. And at one point, she said, "Okay, take these plates. These are for the guests inside. Take them inside." And I took them, showing initiative. I walked inside there, and there I again encountered my boss. This time, still aggressively, but a bit more silently, so that the guests wouldn't hear. He said the same words. He said, "What are you doing here? In the first week, you do not come into the restaurant." And that was the start of a period in which everything that I constantly did was either not good enough, not fast enough, and every time something went wrong, he had kind of a temper, throwing bread baskets at you, throwing plates on the ground, and after 1 month, my morale was just completely crushed. I remember at one point walking into the restaurant with some plates. I would have this fake smile on because I was definitely not enjoying myself there. And I would have a fake smile on, walk up straight and slowly, and I would serve the guests, and then I would walk back, and as soon as I went through the kitchen doors, I would have to run again, because we would have to get the next plate to help the guests as soon as possible. There was this constant pressure going on. And at one point, I had a couple of plates that I had in my hand that I needed to bring up. Above the kitchen, there was the pâtisserie, where they make the desserts. And I needed to bring those as quickly as possible. So I took those plates, and I ran up the stairs, and I slipped, and I fell, and dropped all of those plates on the ground. And the sound of the porcelain breaking on the floor was so loud that I knew, whilst I was falling down the stairs, sitting on the bottom of the staircase, that my boss was going to come in and tell me how incapable I am. Whilst I was sitting there waiting for him, I looked at the broken plates. I was thinking, huh? There's blood laying there. Where's that coming from? And suddenly I looked at my arm and I saw this blood flowing out of my arm, and I could see my tendon running there. Later on, I had to get 7 stitches for that. And I was slowly getting more and more dizzy because of the loss of blood. And I remember not thinking, oh, am I going to be all right? Am I going to still be able to use my hand? No. I was thinking, probably I'm going to be off for a couple of weeks. Have some free time. A couple of months later, after I finished my internship, eventually I came back here, I realized how destructive my surroundings and that thought was. And it's been the starting point of my motivation to train people in communicating more positively. I've now trained over hundreds of people in organizations to communicate more positively with each other. And if there's one thing that they often mention, is that when they're unfulfilled in their jobs, it's because they do not get the acknowledgement that they deserve, just like I didn't get that either. So for today, my goal of this talk for you guys is to give you some tools on how you can make Mondays feel like Fridays. You know that feeling on Friday where you're like, woo, yeah, it's Friday, it's weekend, yeah, I'm gonna enjoy this. And on Monday, you're like, oh, I have to go back to school or back to work. How can you wake up on Monday and feel like, yeah, I'm going back to work again? I'm gonna give you some tools for that. So a lot of people are not fulfilled because they have that acknowledgement that they're missing. And that's interesting to know is what happens with us when we're not acknowledged? Why do we need that acknowledgement? A study done by René Spitz, a psychoanalyst from Austria, in 1952, he deprived babies for at least half a year of their moms. A horrible study, I know, but it was very interesting what the results were. They got their food, they got water, they got everything except the love, the care, the connection, and the acknowledgement from their moms. After half a year, their weight and growth just completely stopped. They were unable to sit or to stand up a little bit, or at least make progress in that. And they just had this gaze, like no smiling, but neither crying, just looking straight ahead into the nothingness. So already from the moment that we're born, acknowledgement is very important. We need that connection. And it doesn't change when we get older. It just shifts. We start needing it from the rest of our family, from our friends, from our colleagues, even from strangers. So that acknowledgement is very important. And another study done by Professor Norihiro Sadato from the University of Psychological Sciences in Japan, his expertise is on what is the effect of behavior on the brain. And the results of his study, in his study, he compared what does a compliment do in comparison to giving a monetary reward when finishing a project. And what he found out is that to the brain, a compliment is as much a social reward as being rewarded money. So in that sense, there's no difference between the two, except for one. Compliments are for free. You can give them anytime. And compliments are also the way to start acknowledging each other more. So when I teach people this in my training, they often come to me and they tell me, yeah, okay, I understand it's important that we give each other compliments. And it would be easy enough, right? If we just start giving each other more compliments, then everyone will feel more fulfilled in their jobs because they'll get the acknowledgement they need. And that way we can make Monday feel more like a Friday. But if it would be that easy, why don't we already do that? And my clients have shown me why, because they come to me, they say, okay, compliment, I see the importance of it, but I'm afraid that when I give more compliments, they're going to be insincere. People are going to think that I'm awkward, or that I want something from them, or they're just going to look at me. What are you saying? So the importance of creating sincere compliments is there. But why is it so difficult for us to give sincere compliments? Then you need to know something about your brain. Your brain has what is called a negativity bias, meaning it tends to think a little bit more negative rather than positive. I'll explain through a story. Just imagine your great grandfather. He was a caveman, and let's give him a name. Let's call him Peter. This is Peter. And Peter wears this animal fur outfit and walks around with a spear, and he roams the lands trying to find food for his family. And at one point he encounters this ferocious animal standing in front of him. Something with big white teeth, big strong muscular build, and just a terrifying roar. And then an animal we would now identify as a saber-toothed tiger. And he would look at that saber-toothed tiger, and what would his response be? Would he be like, that's such a nice animal, I just want to hug it, oh, it's so cute. Probably not, right? Because if he would be doing that, then you wouldn't be a descendant from him. Yeah, you would have been long dead before he was able to make children. No. He would probably, in an instant, first have his muscles tense up, his heart rate would start beating faster, he would get sweaty hands, shaky, and he would run away from that saber-toothed tiger. So, okay, well now we know Peter as a caveman, how he would respond. What does this have to do with you nowadays? We still have that same negativity bias running there. Only we've now replaced our realistic fears with unrealistic ones. And I'm just really curious, who here in the audience, for a second, has like something they fear that they would like to come and share here on the stage? Who would like to share something on the stage? Huh. No one? As soon as I asked that question, did you maybe start noticing that you were thinking about coming here and that you would stumble and maybe not know what to say? Maybe your heart rate started going faster already. You noticed sweaty hands, shaky. And aren't those exactly the things that happened to Peter as well when he encountered a saber-toothed tiger? So our fear for public speaking is an equivalent to that saber-toothed tiger? Because if that's the case, I'm getting out of here now because I don't want to die right now. But as far as I know, people are not really dying from public speaking. So what we create is these unrealistic fears. Okay, so we know now we have that negativity bias, right? Then how can we start giving sincere compliments if that's constantly in the way, making us think about the negative things instead of the positive things of other people? There's one important difference between us and other animals. See, that's also good. No, it's really good. It's really good. Because the negativity bias has some negative effects. And it's really important to know, if we look at the workplace, what kind of effects do they have. So if we look at, for example, our boss. Imagine this is your boss. And you want to tell him something that can be improved. Maybe in your mind, you're going to be like, oh, but maybe he will respond like this. Maybe he will look like a saber-toothed tiger and try to kill me. You'll have that thought going on there. And the same thing happens when, for example, you're working, you're sitting behind your laptop and you're working at your office, and at one point you think, okay, I need some help. I don't know exactly how to do this. But then you're doubting, because if you ask for help, maybe they'll think you're stupid and that you can't do it alone. So you don't ask. And those are all those effects of negativity biases, just like us not giving each other compliments, because we're not focusing on the positives. All right, so like I mentioned, there's one important difference between us and animals. See, if an animal go, it doesn't change. Turn it off and on again. That's good, that's good. If an animal, let's say a rat, is really hungry, so its stimulus is, oh, I'm hungry, I want to eat something. Then its response is, I'm going to go and look for food, find some food. Easy enough. As human beings, we'll work a little bit differently. Look, he searches for food, and then eventually he finds some food. He's like, oh, nice, I found some food. We, however, as human beings, we get also that stimulus. We get, I'm hungry. But then after that, we might get a thought, and we're like, well, but I'm going to eat with Susan in about an hour at this restaurant, so it would be a waste if I start eating something now. So we have what is called a thought in between, and therefore our response is not to go and eat on that moment. And that's where the idea lies in creating Monday more like Friday, because if we are going to have that thought, why don't we influence that thought? I've already influenced some of your thoughts by, for example, asking you who would like to come here on the stage. Immediately you started thinking, come on the stage, should I come on the stage? And you started having an emotional reaction on that moment as well. Now I ask you a question. What if you ask yourself a question, and not coming on the stage, but a positive question? And if we relate it to making Mondays feel more like Fridays, what if we start asking ourselves a question like, what do I like about my colleague? So imagine, at one point, you're at work, and you have your colleague Bob, and he's working really hard. And your negativity bias is being triggered. That's the stimulus is, oh, why is Bob working so hard? Is he after the promotion that I also want? And suddenly you're looking at Bob very negatively, and you don't do anything anymore. You just think about the negative side of everything. What if in that moment, you take a mindful moment for yourself, and you ask yourself that positive question, what do I like about my colleague Bob right now? And you keep on asking yourself that question until you actually feel that answer. You feel, you know what? Bob is working so hard. I feel like he just has the best intention for the company, and he just wants to make the customers very happy. And then after that, you can go to Bob and tell him that. You can give him that compliment. And then it's going to be sincere because you actually feel it on that moment. So, is it that easy, right? Like, maybe you could say, okay, making Mondays feel like Fridays. We just need to make sure that we ask ourselves that question. And it can actually be that easy. It is practice, however. It's like a muscle that you need to train, constantly asking yourself that question. But then again, is it that easy, and can you do it in any situation? When I was 22, my stepmom, she called me, and she was like crying uncontrollably. And after about 2-3 minutes, I was able to calm her down a bit, and she was able to say that my dad had to go to the hospital because he was rushed into a surgery because his aorta ruptured. He was going to have about a 25% chance of survival, and he was going to be on the operation table for at least 10 hours. And I remember just being completely devastated at that moment. I remember that night laying in bed because we were not going to go to the hospital at that moment because he was going to be on the surgery table the entire night. We would go in the morning. I was laying in bed and just had one specific thought. I'd already lost my mom when I was 9. I'm going to lose my dad as well, 22. And the next morning, I was sitting on the train, and I didn't sleep at all. I was completely destroyed going towards the hospital. But suddenly I had this kind of feeling like if my dad is to survive, he needs some kind of positive energy. Plus, I just feel this responsibility for my family to always make them feel good. So I thought, okay, how can I change my perspective? How can I give my family that comfort? And I changed this question around from what do I like about my colleagues to what do I like about this situation? And the very first response that came out of my mind was like, nothing! I like nothing here! Fair enough, right? But then I asked myself the question again and again. Like I said, it's like a muscle to train. I asked it again and again until I started coming up with some answers. I started thinking, well, I get to see my family again. I've been so busy with work, I haven't seen them in a while. That's where it started. But then again, I asked myself again, okay, what do I like about this situation? And I was like, oh, you know what? I feel actually this pain that I have of maybe losing my dad, that shows that how much I love him. And I felt that love going through me. And you know what else? He was healthy the day before, and suddenly he was in a life-threatening situation. And anything like that can happen to any of us at any time. So let's enjoy every single day and not worry about the small stuff. So I had those 3 perspectives in my mind, and I arrived at the hospital where I walked into the waiting room. I was able to give my family some comfort. And my dad, he eventually survived. He's actually sitting right here. And if there's one thing that I want to give to my dad for the rest of his life, it's the possibility to live in an environment that is positive, and that everyone feels more fulfilled in. So we can start changing our perspectives by asking ourselves the right question. And if we want to make Mondays feel more like Fridays, let's start asking the question, what do I like about my colleagues? And ask yourself that question over and over again until you come up with that feeling, and then you can give that sincere compliment to them. So I want to make an agreement with all of you today to at least one time per day, take a moment, be mindful, ask yourself that question, and give that compliment to someone in your team that you're working with, for example. Because it starts with us here. And only that way, at one point, when it's Monday again, we can start saying, thank God it's Monday.